When I was a freshman in college, I lived in the dorms and I got a random roommate. I thought that it would work out fine because I get along well with most people and make friends pretty easily. I figured that my roommate would probably get along with me as well, even if we didn't like the same things. Obviously, I hoped that he would have similar interests and maybe we could become good friends, because I didn't really know anybody else at the university that I was going to at the time. Well, when I moved into the dorms, my roommate was not there. His name was Ryan and his stuff was there, but I wasn't quite sure where he was. After my parents had helped me finish moving in all my stuff and left, Ryan was still nowhere in sight. In fact, he did not show up until the next day. It was when I got back from my first class and had a little bit of time left before my next one. When I entered the room, Ryan was just there, sitting at his desk and apparently doing homework. Ryan was about average height and weight, had glasses, and short blondish colored hair. Right away, he did not seem very friendly. When I entered the room, he turned and looked at me, but did not say hi or anything. Just as fast as he looked at me, he turned his head back to his desk. I said hi and walked over to him and stuck my hand out for a handshake. I remember he sort of hesitated, but did shake my hand. I had a brief conversation with him, asking him about himself. He was not a freshman like me, but a sophomore at the school, and he was from a small town several hours away. That was really all that I gathered. Soon, I went to my next class. After that, things only got more and more strange. Ryan was not often in his room, but when he was, I would sometimes try talking to him. He would usually give me very short answers and never ask me anything about myself. I thought maybe he was just shy or uncomfortable around other people, but at one point, he told me in a very stern way to stop talking to him and to not talk to him anymore. It was pretty rude, and I no longer felt like he was just a shy kid, but a kind of rude one. Still, I didn't want it to be a terrible semester, so I chose not to argue or anything. I decided to just let him be on his side of the room, and I would do my thing on my side. As the weeks went on, Ryan would be gone for sometimes days at a time. I would wake up and he would just be gone. Then when it would be nighttime, he still wouldn't be there, and I wouldn't see him for several days. Then, typically, he'd just walk into the room like nothing happened, or I'd come back and he'd already be there. I never bothered to ask him where he was though, knowing that he didn't want me talking to him. I remember at one point, on one of the days that he was at the dorm, he left sometime in the evening. Hours later, at probably like 11 o'clock at night or so, I remember I heard talking in the hallway. It got louder, and I realized that two guys were arguing. I recognized Ryan's voice to be one of them. He loudly told the guy to shut up, and a few seconds later, he walked into the room. I found out the next day that it was another guy who lived on our floor who he yelled at. Apparently, all the guy said to him was, "Hey, how's it going?" when they passed each other in the hallway. Ryan snapped at him immediately, telling him not to talk to him, which made the other guy angry. They argued briefly before Ryan walked away. I found this out because the other guy came up to me and told me that my roommate was really strange. That's when we had the conversation, and I was kind of creeped out by Ryan's erratic behavior. As the next few weeks went on, I was hoping to be able to get a new roommate when the next semester rolled around. In the meantime, I just ignored Ryan and he did the same to me. It really wasn't that bad because he was typically gone, so it was mostly like I had my own dorm to myself. You just never knew when Ryan would be back or how long he would be there. So one day, I remember that I got up and went to class. Ryan had been gone for the whole night and was still gone when I got up and left. I was away for several hours attending my classes. When I returned to the dorm room, I went inside to see everything on my side of the room just gone. It was the craziest thing that I'd ever seen. The bed, desk, and chair that came with the room were still there, but literally everything that I had was gone. My books, my blankets and pillows, clothes, snacks, and everything was nowhere in sight. Ryan's side of the room looked exactly the same, and Ryan was not there. I went inside the room and looked around, trying to figure out what happened. I was sure that I locked the door when I left, and I immediately suspected Ryan. I started to look on his side of the room. He really didn't have that much stuff to begin with. He really just had some clothes, a few blankets, and some notebooks. There was no place that he could have put all my things. After realizing that my stuff was definitely not in the room, I walked out into the hallway. I went to the resident assistant and told him what happened. We did a small investigation looking around the building, and soon we got in touch with campus security. Unfortunately, the dorm building was really old, and did not have any security cameras inside of it. Luckily, I had made a few friends by that point in the school year. One had a dorm room all to himself, so I stayed in his spare bed for the next couple of nights. An investigation was done, and Ryan was nowhere to be seen. Several days later, though, my things were found. They were located a little ways into a woods just off campus. He had tossed all my stuff there. Ryan, meanwhile, did not show up for the entire rest of the semester. I was given a new dorm room all to myself by the school, and they also gave me a gift card to buy some new stuff, so that was nice. But as far as I'm aware, Ryan never showed up to campus again. I have no idea where he went. He was a very strange guy, but I'm glad that I didn't have to live with him any longer. For a while when I was younger, I had a roommate. We shared a small 2-bedroom house together just outside the city. I didn't know the guy until I moved in, but I didn't have any money and I needed a roommate to afford renting the house, so that was the only reason that I lived with him. We both paid half the rent of the house, and the place was not very nice and pretty cheap. The guy's name was Ben. When we first moved in, we seemed to get along decently. For the first few days, we mostly just stayed in our own rooms or were gone at work. I did run into him in the kitchen once and we talked briefly. He seemed alright. However, about a week or two into living there, and one night I was awoken to the sound of somebody banging on my bedroom door. It was loud enough to wake me, and it continued, so I called out asking who was there. I figured that it had to be Ben, because who else would be in our house? The knocking stopped at that point, but nobody responded to me. So I got up and I walked over to the door, but when I opened it, nobody was there. I looked down the hallway and Ben's door was shut. I figured he had done it, but I didn't know why. Maybe it was a prank. He just didn't seem like the type of guy to pull that kind of a prank though. I went back to bed at that point. When I got up, Ben had already left for his job, and I forgot to talk to him about it anyways. But the next night, basically the same thing happened again. I once more was awoken in the wee hours of the morning to a banging on my bedroom door. This time I was more frustrated, and I called out, "What?" The knocking stopped, and I got up and ran to the door and opened it. When I got there, nobody was in the hallway again, but I looked and saw Ryan's door closing. I went over and knocked on the door, but he didn't answer. I asked what his deal was, but he still said nothing. I thought about barging into the room and giving him a piece of my mind, but I decided not to. I just walked back to my room and returned to sleep. Maybe Ryan was a sleepwalker and that was the explanation. Although sleepwalkers don't generally act that way as far as I'm aware. They're not called sleep pranksters. So the next morning, I wanted to confront Ben, but once more he was gone when I woke up. That night, again, I was awoken to a knocking. This time, I got right out of bed and marched over to the door and opened it. When I did, Ryan was standing right there on the other side. He looked at me, and I asked him what his problem was. Ryan then shoved me backwards before running off to his room. I went after him and tried opening his door, but it was locked. I banged on it for a while, but he didn't answer. So then I just went back to bed again. I was planning on finding a way to move out as soon as possible. The next morning, Ben was not gone yet. When he left his room shortly after I got up, I confronted him. I asked him what on earth he was doing. Ryan said flat out that he didn't like me and he didn't want to live with me. I told him that I was going to move out as soon as humanly possible. Within a few days, I had found an apartment and moved there, which was good because I didn't like living in that house anyways. The apartment was more comfortable. In the meantime, Ryan did not bang on my door at all for the last few nights that I lived there. Looking back, Ryan was definitely a strange guy. I'm not sure if he was trying to scare me out of living there or what. He could have just told me that he wanted me to move out and we could have handled it like men. There was no reason for the crazy nonsense that he did. I'm glad that I found an apartment so quick. I have a crazy experience from when I lived with this one girl years ago. It was a year after I graduated from college, and I shared a small house with this girl named Leah. We had gone to college together, so we knew each other, but I wouldn't say that we were friends, more so just acquaintances. When I lived with her, we got along okay, but we still didn't really do anything together. We mostly just kept to ourselves. The lease was for 1 year, and during the year we worked our jobs mostly, and here and there we talked to each other. Overall, it was not too bad living there. The neighborhood was okay and there were never any problems, until very late when there was less than a month left on the lease. I had some money saved up and was planning to move into a little bit nicer place, probably an apartment. Leah was planning to do the same, but we were not going to be roommates. So I remember that one night I was up late and in my bedroom. I just remembered that all of a sudden I was hearing like there were people in the house. My bedroom door was closed, so I couldn't hear things in other rooms that great, but I thought that it was strange. I was going to get up to see, and I heard the sound of Leah scream for a very short time. The next thing that I knew, my bedroom door was opening up, and I saw 3 men wearing all black. They each had masks on, so I couldn't tell anything about what they looked like. It was a terrifying sight. The men just walked right into my room and started going through all my stuff. They motioned for me to stand in the corner of the room, so I did. Very quickly, they picked up a bunch of my things, and some of them they just tossed back down. They ended up taking my laptop, phone, wallet, some jewelry, and a few other items. After that, they put them in bags and left the room probably 2 or 3 minutes after entering. Then they walked over towards Leah's bedroom and the rest of the house. We didn't really have that much other stuff. The men then took a few more things and left, and were gone probably not more than 5 minutes after I had noticed them. It was so fast, but I didn't know what to do or what was going on. I was just glad that we were okay. But then I realized that all our stuff had been stolen. Leah said that the men took her phone and wallet as well, and we only had our cell phones, so we had to go to a neighbor's house and ask them to call the police. The cops came out and we told them how we had been robbed. They took down information and said that they would look around the area. The men were long gone though. I didn't see what kind of car they were in or anything. I was not sure how they entered the house, but I figured the door must have been left unlocked, which I know I didn't do. But Leah claimed that she locked it as well. After that, I had to go get a new phone and tried to get a new license and everything else as well. It was a big hassle because everything was gone. My laptop, all my credit cards, everything. It took several days to get things in order again. Plus, I had to get my new apartment very shortly. Well, over the final couple of weeks that I lived with Leah, I found something strange. She still had her laptop, and I was surprised that the men didn't steal it. She said it was because it had been under a blanket on her bed, and she just got lucky. I believed that, but I remember that I called the police department several times in the days after I got another phone. I wanted to see how their investigation was going, but Leah told me to just let it go because the stuff will never get found. I was surprised that she wouldn't want to catch whoever did it as much as I did. Well, I remember that I got my apartment a few days before the lease of our house ended, so I moved all my stuff and moved into the apartment. However, I still had my keys to the house, and I was going to come by the final day that we had it and do some cleaning. Apparently, Leah was unaware of this, because when I pulled up to the house, I remember seeing another car in the driveway that I didn't recognize. I parked across the street and didn't get out of my car right away. I saw 3 men then get out of the car and walk up to the door with several backpacks, where Leah met them and let them in the house. Obviously, I couldn't confirm those were the same 3 men from the robbery because I didn't see their faces, but this still seemed pretty incriminating. I stayed in the car. Within 2 or 3 minutes, the men walked out of the house without any backpacks. When they left, I walked in. I questioned Leah who the guys were, and she seemed surprised that I knew, but she said they were just old friends. I accused her of setting up the robbery, which she denied and tried to kick me out of the house. I went straight to the police, and my theory ended up being right. The police were already onto the guys because they had tried to sell my laptop to a pawn shop nearby. The pawn shop didn't take it though because they could tell that it was stolen. Within a few days, the men were caught, and Leah admitted to letting them in the house and faking the whole thing. I was really the only person who got robbed. She was willing to do all that just to get about $3,000 worth of my stuff. I will never have another roommate again unless it's somebody who I personally know really good. Several years ago, I used to live in this apartment with 2 other women. Their names were Amanda and Carly. The apartment was kind of crappy, and we lived on the first floor of 2. The front door opened right up to the outside, and the parking lot was in the back of the building. So the 3 of us met online to get the place, and the apartment had 3 bedrooms, so we each got one. At first, we all got along pretty well, but as time went on, Carly was not a good roommate at all. Amanda was a great roommate, She was friendly and considerate of other people. However, Carly did nothing around the house. She would use our dishes and food and never clean anything up. She would leave things out, and she also never did any other chores around the house. I remember that she would have her boyfriend over a lot as well, and they would have stuff on her TV super loud at all hours of the night. They would also smoke in and out of her room, and it stunk up the whole place. After a couple of months, I remember that I asked her to do her part around the house and be a better roommate. She responded by saying that she pays her share of the rent every month, so she doesn't have to do anything else. It started to become an argument, so I stopped talking to her. I really didn't know what to do. Amanda tried talking to her as well, and was met with pretty much the same result. Sometimes Carly and her boyfriend would be gone for days at a time, which was always nice for us. But overall, she was a terrible roommate and we didn't like her. One time, when Amanda was gone at work, I had another conversation with Carly. I don't remember what exactly started it, but we ended up arguing about the same old stuff. I know that I was getting on her because she put stuff into the garbage, causing it to overflow, but she didn't take it out, which she never did. Still, she said that she paid the rent so she didn't have to do anything else. Well, I went to take the garbage out to the dumpster myself. When I did, I went around back to the dumpster and then went back to go inside. When I got to the apartment, the door was locked. I didn't have my keys with me because I was just going to be gone for a minute. I knocked on the door, but Carly didn't answer. Luckily, I did have my phone and I called her, but she kept declining my calls. I remember that after I called her like 10 times, she finally picked up, just to curse at me and hang up. I couldn't get back into the apartment. Amanda wasn't going to be home for hours, and I didn't know what to do. After trying to get Carly to let me back inside for at least 30 minutes, I called the cops. When they got there, things got somewhat resolved. Carly finally let me back in, and claimed that she didn't hear me, which was a lie because I had all the proof of the phone calls. The police told her that she couldn't lock me out because I was on the lease, and then they left. I was really mad at Carly, obviously. But not too long after this, Carly told Amanda and I that she was going to be staying at her boyfriend's for the rest of the lease. By this point, there were 3 months left of our lease. Amanda and I were both very happy to hear it. So she ended up moving all her stuff out of the apartment and was gone. The next roughly 2 months were great. Carly was technically still on the lease and supposed to pay, but she didn't pay her share of the rent when it came around. Amanda and I were not surprised, and after talking to the landlord, we agreed to pay the amount between us. Apparently, Carly didn't respond to him. We would rather do that than have her living with us. She did still have her keys to the apartment though. Well, sometime later, about 2 months after Carly moved out, none of us had seen her or heard from her since. I remember that I was in my room and up late one night, and Amanda was in her room as well. All of a sudden, I heard the sound of glass breaking coming from the living room. I realized that somebody was breaking in. I stayed in my bedroom, which unfortunately did not have a lock on the door. I was about to call the police when I heard footsteps approaching. Then the door suddenly opened up, and I saw Carly standing there. She asked me why I didn't answer the door, but I never heard her knocking or anything. I asked her why she broke into our apartment, because she still had a key. She said she had lost it though. I was really mad that she literally broke our window to get in. She said that she had an argument with her boyfriend and they broke up, so now she was going to move back into the apartment. I told her that she hadn't even paid the rent. She said, "What were they gonna do, evict me? I didn't even live here." I didn't know how to respond. I was just glad that our lease was very close to being over at that point. Carly did end up getting evicted though before the lease ended, for breaking the window as well as not paying her share of the rent. After that, I haven't seen her or talked to her since, and I'm glad. When I went to college, I lived in the dorms my freshman and sophomore years. I remember that my first year, I got assigned a random roommate. It was a guy named David, who was a little bit weird, but overall we got along fine. He had a very strange sense of humor and said some weird things. We weren't really friends, but we talked sometimes because of being roommates and stuff. Well, I remember a few weeks into the school year, and there were reports on campus of somebody who would dress in all black and do strange things. Sometimes they would chase students, other times there was small vandalism, like the guy would tip over trash cans or write on the wall or stuff. He would cover his face with a ski mask, so nobody had a clue as to who he was. I was hearing about it just like everybody else. A lot of the students were talking about him. Well, one time, someone in my own dorm building left his room, and and when he came back, the masked mystery guy was in the room. The mystery guy apparently messed up the room, tossing around all his items and then taking his laptop and running away. I heard about it and I was nervous that I would encounter this mystery guy. To that point, I had never seen him in person. Well, I did the following day. One of my classes ended super early, so I went back to the dorm room. When I got back, nobody was there. However, I remember that not long after I arrived back, suddenly the door unlocked. It then quickly swung open, and I saw the notorious masked man. He took off the mask, revealing that it was my roommate David. Then he saw me and had a surprised look on his face. He asked me why I wasn't in class. I asked him what on earth he was doing. I realized that he was the identity behind the guy. David told me that if I told anyone, he would make me live to regret it. I didn't know how serious of a threat it was, but in the moment, I told him I wouldn't say anything as long as he stopped and gave the stolen laptop back to the kid. I knew that was messed up to take something like that. He said that he would, so we moved on at that point and I soon went to another class. For a few days, I didn't really see David much at all, but I at least didn't hear anything about the masked man on campus. I talked to the kid who had his laptop stolen though, and asked him if he ever got it back or anything, and he said no. At that point, I requested to get a new room. I really didn't want to live with David anymore, and I felt like he was unpredictable. Luckily, my wish was granted. I got assigned a new room the following week, and then I moved out. But David was not happy that I moved out for some reason. I remember that he threatened me again not to tell on him when I left. I told him to give the kid's laptop back or I would tell. Well, a few days later, I heard about another incident regarding the masked man, aka David. At that point, I couldn't hold my tongue any longer. I knew the kid still didn't have his laptop, so I went to the school offices and I told on David. I was not afraid of him doing anything to me because I no longer shared a room with him. Well, the next night, pretty late, I was in my dorm room and somebody tried opening my door. I got up and went to look and saw David standing there on the other side. He then started knocking. I yelled at him to go away, but he didn't. Instead, he kept pounding on my door and trying to open it. Then he started to kick it really hard. I really thought that the door might break from the force. I was getting nervous because I didn't know what David was capable of, and I didn't really have much to defend myself other than my fists. Luckily, David did not get in. The resident assistant heard the loud noise and came to question him. He then took off running. I found out the next day that David had been kicked out of the college. Luckily, the kid got his laptop back. For the rest of the semester, I was afraid that David would come back and try to do something to me. I knew that he hated me for getting him kicked out of the school, but really, he did that to himself. I'm just glad that I haven't seen him since.